I brought my boss a $90,000 client contract, and 1 week later, I was fired. No warning, no explanation that made sense, just a cold handshake from HR and a box to carry my things out. And as I walked through those glass doors for the last time, I realized something that made me stop in my tracks. Every single deal that kept that company alive had my name on it. But let me back up, because if I don't tell you how this all started, you might not understand just how deep this betrayal cut. For months, I'd been chasing a client that everyone in the office said was out of reach. They were the type of business our CEO had been dreaming of landing for years. The kind of contract that could bring in 6 figures annually. The kind of deal that could get you a promotion, maybe even your own team. I worked nights, weekends, skipped dinners with friends, ignored my own birthday, all because I believed that if I could bring this in, I'd prove my worth once and for all. And I did it. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I sat across the table from their CFO, pen in hand, heart pounding like a drum. We signed the papers, shook hands, and just like that, I had secured a $90,000 contract, the biggest deal of my career. I can still remember the feeling when I slid the folder into my bag. My palms were sweating, but I couldn't stop smiling. That night, when I sent the signed documents to my boss, he replied in less than 5 minutes. "Great work. Let's discuss next steps tomorrow." No exclamation point, no thank you. Just cold words on a screen. The next morning, I walked into the office with my head high. Colleagues were whispering, some patting me on the back, some glaring with envy. But I didn't care. I knew what I'd accomplished. I expected at least a handshake from my boss, maybe a word of congratulations in front of the team. Instead, he avoided eye contact. He walked past me like I was invisible. By lunch, I was called into a meeting room. HR was there. My boss sat across the table, his jaw tight, his arms folded. "This isn't easy," he began in that fake sincere voice people use when they've already made up their mind. "We've had to make some difficult decisions about restructuring. Unfortunately, your role is being eliminated." I laughed, literally laughed. I thought it was a bad joke. "You're firing me? After I just brought in the biggest contract this company has had all year?" His eyes flickered for a second. Then he said the words that still make my blood boil. "Sometimes personal performance doesn't align with company direction." Company direction, I had just handed them $90,000 worth of new business. What kind of direction doesn't want that? But I didn't get answers. HR slid a folder across the table, told me about severance, told me to return my badge. My boss stood up before I even finished reading. He didn't shake my hand. He didn't thank me. He just walked out. I packed my desk in silence. A few coworkers glanced over, but no one spoke. I saw one guy smirk. Another girl avoided eye contact. That's when it hit me. They all knew. This wasn't a sudden restructuring. This was a setup. The contract I had just landed? My boss had already claimed it as his own. In the official announcement email that went out the next morning, my name wasn't mentioned once. The credit went to the leadership team, with my boss's name bolded at the top. That was the moment my shock turned into rage. I'd been played. They used me to land the deal, then cut me loose before I could claim the recognition. They thought I'd walk away quietly, grateful for the scraps of severance. But they forgot one thing. Every single one of those 45 active contracts, every client relationship, every signature, it wasn't the company that earned those. It was me. My calls, my emails, my trust. Without me, those deals were built on sand. And if they thought I was going to sit back while they stole my work and tossed me aside like garbage, they had no idea who they were dealing with. You ever sit in a room and know that every word being said is a lie? That's what it felt like when they fired me. HR kept using words like restructuring and realignment. My boss sat there with that fake frown plastered on his face, nodding along as if this was something out of his control. But I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't conflicted. He was satisfied. When the meeting ended, I wasn't escorted out by security, which almost made it worse. It meant they weren't afraid of me. They thought I was harmless, disposable. I carried a cardboard box past people I'd mentored, people who once came to me for help and suddenly couldn't meet my gaze. Some ducked their heads, some whispered, and some, I'll never forget this, smiled. Back at my apartment, the silence was deafening. My phone buzzed with the severance email, filled with legal jargon about non-disclosure agreements and non-compete clauses. I stared at it until the words blurred. My chest burned with humiliation. 1 week earlier, I'd been the guy who brought in the contract of the year. Now I was unemployed, disposable, and invisible. But then came the kicker. The next morning, I checked my inbox out of habit. Buried between job board notifications and spam was an all-staff email from my boss. Subject line, celebrating a major win. I opened it, and there it was, the $90,000 contract I had landed, parroted as his accomplishment. Through strategic leadership and vision, we've secured a significant partnership. His name bolded 3 times. Mine? Nowhere. I felt my stomach twist. Rage doesn't come like a lightning bolt. It's slower, heavier, like boiling water spilling over. I sat there shaking, scrolling through congratulatory replies from colleagues. Amazing work. You're a true leader, one even wrote. This proves why you're the right man to be in charge. Right man to be in charge, the same man who had just shoved me out the door. I slammed my laptop shut so hard it rattled the table. That contract was mine. Every word, every late-night call, every promise I made to the client, mine. I knew their CFO's kid was applying to colleges, knew their CO's favorite bourbon, knew the tiny details that built trust. My boss had never even been in the room with them, but now he was parading my work as his crowning achievement. I paced my apartment like a caged animal. First came humiliation, then betrayal, then something sharper, something colder. Because in my head, I started adding numbers, not just the $90,000 deal. 45 other contracts, 45 clients, and every single one of them had signed because of me, not the company. The realization hit me like a freight train. My boss didn't just fire me, he set himself on fire without realizing it, because he had just cut off the only person holding those deals together. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, replaying every detail of the meeting, every smirk I saw in the office, every word in that email. By 3 a.m., my mind was sharp, focused, ruthless. I opened my laptop again, this time not to job boards, but to contracts. Digital copies, PDFs, scanned signatures, all mine. And that's when I saw it, buried in the fine print of the agreements. Clauses, escape routes, conditions that could nullify the deal if certain terms weren't honored. Tiny legal levers most people ignored, but I'd memorized them. I'd built them into the contracts myself, small protections for clients who trusted me. I leaned back in my chair and whispered out loud, "They think they own these deals, but I own the trust. And if there's one thing you should never do, it's betray the man who knows where every string is tied." I didn't have to dig deep to confirm what I already knew. By the end of that week, the whispers had made their way back to me. A friend from accounting, someone I'd bought countless lunches for, someone who actually respected me, sent me a screenshot of the company's internal Slack. There was my boss boasting about his $90,000 contract. "This is the kind of deal that sets a standard for leadership," he wrote. Leadership. He hadn't even shaken the client's hand. I should have felt crushed. Instead, I laughed, a sharp, bitter laugh that echoed through my empty apartment. Because if he was arrogant enough to steal my credit in front of the entire company, he was arrogant enough to think there wouldn't be consequences. And he wasn't just claiming my one contract. Oh no, he was rebranding my entire portfolio as his legacy. In his department update, he listed metrics, growth percentages, retention rates, client satisfaction scores. Every number came from my deals, my sleepless nights, my endless calls, my strategy. He had erased me completely, like I'd never existed. But here's what he didn't understand. Those numbers weren't built on him. They weren't even built on the company. They were built on me. Because when you spend years cultivating clients, you stop being a salesperson and start being something else. A confidant, a problem solver, a lifeline. My clients didn't answer the phone because of the logo on my email signature. They answered because it was me calling. And that's when the thought hit me. A dangerous thought, a liberating thought. What if I took it all back? It didn't feel like revenge at first. It felt like justice. I opened contract after contract, scanning the fine print like a detective at a crime scene. 30-day cancellation clauses, performance guarantees, breach of trust language, escape hatches that no one but me even remembered were there. The more I read, the faster my pulse raced. These weren't just contracts. They were levers, and I was the only one who knew how to pull them. I started with the $90,000 client. I called their CFO, the same man I'd spent months building rapport with. "I need to tell you something," I said. My voice was steady, calm, professional, but underneath it was laced with fire. I explained how the person now claiming responsibility for the deal had never even attended a single meeting. I reminded him who had worked weekends, who had sat in his office until 9 p.m., answering questions, who had earned that trust. There was a pause on the other end. Then the CFO said quietly, "We signed because of you, not them." That sentence lit a fuse. Over the next 48 hours, I mapped out every single client relationship I had built. Names, numbers, contract clauses, renewal dates. 45 deals in total, each one worth tens of thousands, each one hanging by a thread that ran straight through me. And I realized something my boss had never considered. A deal isn't ink on paper, it's trust. And when the person who is that trust walks away, the paper means nothing. By Sunday night, I had a notebook full of scribbled plans. Arrows, phone numbers, deadlines. I didn't sleep. I didn't want to. The rage kept me sharp. The betrayal kept me focused. They wanted to erase me. Fine. I would erase them first. Because when you fire the person holding your empire together, you don't just make an enemy. You make the architect of your downfall. The first call was the hardest. Not because I doubted myself, but because I knew that once I started, there was no turning back. Monday morning, 8:15 a.m., I dialed the number of a client whose contract I had written with surgical precision. They picked up on the second ring. "Hey, good to hear from you. Everything okay?" I could almost hear the smile in their voice. That smile wasn't for my company. It was for me. I laid it out plainly. "I need to tell you something that's going to change how you see this partnership. The man claiming credit for our contract had nothing to do with it. He's the one who fired me last week. And without me, the terms we agreed on can't be fulfilled." There was silence, then a slow exhale. "So you're saying this deal isn't stable anymore?" "I'm saying this deal doesn't exist without me, and you've got an out clause if you want it." By the end of that 15-minute call, they were already drafting a cancellation letter. One down, 44 to go. I hung up and leaned back in my chair, adrenaline surging. I wasn't destroying anything. I was reclaiming it. These contracts weren't ink on paper. They were extensions of the trust I had built, and my boss had just severed the person holding them together. The second call was easier. A logistics company I'd spent months courting. I reminded their COO of the late-night calls, the emergencies I'd helped them navigate, the way I'd made sure their issues were solved before anyone else even knew there was a problem. Then I asked one question. "Do you believe the company that fired me can offer you that same commitment?" His answer was immediate. "No." Another contract gone. By lunch, I'd made 5 calls. 3 cancellations, 2 more pending. The dominoes were starting to fall, but the real satisfaction came around 2 p.m. My phone buzzed with a text from an old colleague still inside the company. "What the hell is going on? The VP just stormed into a meeting with legal. Half the sales team looks like they're about to throw up." I smiled. The panic had begun. That evening, I poured myself a drink and went back to the stack of contracts. I highlighted clauses, circled dates, underlined penalties. It was like sharpening knives. Every deal I touched was another cut, another wound in the empire they had tried to build on my back. And the best part? I didn't even need to lie. All I had to do was tell the truth. The truth that my boss had stolen my work. The truth that I had been cut loose after delivering results they couldn't replicate. The truth that trust was gone. And without trust, the ink meant nothing. By the end of the week, 12 contracts had been canceled. 12 revenue streams gone. That's when the phone calls started. Not from clients, but from the company itself. Blocked numbers. Unknown callers. I didn't answer. Let them sweat. Friday afternoon, another text from my inside source. The board is demanding answers. They're asking why all the contracts are collapsing. Your boss looks like he hasn't slept in days. I raised my glass in a silent toast. Sleep was a luxury he didn't deserve, because this was only the beginning. I wasn't just cutting off contracts. I was dismantling his empire piece by piece. And the more it crumbled, the more everyone would see the truth. Without me, he was nothing. By the second week, the company was bleeding contracts faster than they could cover the losses. Every morning, I brewed a pot of coffee, sat at my desk, and made my calls. Some clients needed a gentle nudge, a reminder of how the trust had been broken. Others needed nothing more than a single sentence. The man claiming responsibility for this deal wasn't even in the room when you signed. And one by one, they folded. Word spread quickly. In industries where reputation is currency, whispers move faster than press releases. Vendors, partners, even competitors started asking questions. Why are so many clients canceling? What's happening inside that company? The answer was simple. Without me, there was nothing to hold it together. By Wednesday, my phone lit up with a number I recognized immediately. My old boss. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. By the third attempt, I picked up. His voice cracked with exhaustion. What are you doing? Protecting my work, I said calmly. You're destroying everything we built. I laughed. We didn't build anything. I did. You just stole the credit. Now I'm taking it back. He tried the guilt card next. You're ruining people's jobs. Families depend on this company. Funny, I replied. That didn't seem to bother you when you fired me after I handed you $90,000 on a silver platter. Silence. Then in a tone dripping with desperation, we can make this right. Come back. We'll talk about reinstating you. It was almost funny. The man who tossed me aside like garbage was now begging me to return. No, I said. You don't get to erase me and then call me when the walls start falling in. This is your mess now. Clean it up. I hung up before he could respond. That night, I got another message from my source inside the company. Board meeting was brutal. Investors furious. They want answers. Your boss looks like he's drowning. Good. Let him drown. Because I wasn't finished. I moved beyond cancellations. I started introducing my clients to competitors, the ones who valued loyalty and honesty. Deals that once had my company's logo were now moving across town to rivals who knew exactly what had happened, because I told them. Every client I redirected was another nail in the coffin, and every time I heard that another account had vanished from their books, I felt that same bitter laugh rise up in my chest. By Friday, 27 contracts were gone. The company's numbers, once their pride and joy, were now a disaster. Sales projections slashed. Future growth canceled. Entire teams suddenly with no work to do. And my boss? He was no longer strutting around with his chest out. Rumors said he was barely sleeping, storming out of meetings, snapping at anyone who dared to ask a question. The same man who claimed to be the architect of success was now presiding over its collapse. It was beautiful, but I wasn't done yet, because the real revenge wasn't just watching his empire fall. The real revenge would come when he had to face the board, the shareholders, the press, and admit the truth. That he wasn't the leader he pretended to be. That he wasn't the man behind the success. That he was nothing without me. The end didn't come with fireworks. It came with silence. By the third week, 41 of the 45 contracts were gone. Clients didn't just cancel, they slammed the door shut. Some even posted statements online about trust issues and misrepresentation. The company's reputation wasn't cracking, it was disintegrating. And my boss, the man who paraded my work as his own, he finally broke. I heard about it from my source inside. The boardroom showdown. Investors sitting around a polished oak table, demanding explanations as the numbers flashed on the screen. Contracts terminated, revenue in freefall, stock value dipping. He tried to bluff, tried to claim market conditions, client volatility, external factors. But then someone asked the one question he couldn't answer. Why did all these clients walk away the moment one employee left? One employee. Me. He stammered, tried to shift blame, but the truth was undeniable. The empire he claimed to have built collapsed the second I was gone, and everyone saw it. That afternoon, an announcement hit the newswires. Company leadership changes effective immediately. CEO stepping down to pursue other opportunities. Corporate speak for fired. I read it twice, then set my phone down and stared out the window. For the first time in weeks, I felt the tension leave my shoulders. It was done, but the story didn't end there. Because while he was drowning, I was rising. Competitors had been watching. They'd seen the clients follow me out the door, seen how quickly I dismantled what others thought was untouchable. Within days, offers started pouring in. Not just jobs, partnerships, opportunities. One firm wanted me to lead their entire client strategy. Another offered me a stake in the business. They weren't hiring me to fill a chair. They were asking me to build, to create, to lead. I picked the one that felt right. A competitor who valued loyalty above politics, who understood that trust is worth more than any quarterly report. They gave me freedom, resources, and respect, the three things my old boss never once offered. And as I signed my new contract, I thought back to that moment in the HR office when they handed me a folder and expected me to walk away quietly. They thought they were erasing me, but all they did was set me free to destroy them. Here's the truth. You can steal credit, you can forge emails, you can even fire the one person holding everything together. But you can't fake loyalty. You can't fake trust. And when those vanish, no amount of corporate spin can save you. So, yes, I brought my boss a $90,000 contract. He fired me for it. And in return, I canceled 45 deals and took his career with them. Was it revenge? Absolutely. But it was also justice. Because in the end, karma isn't abstract. Karma is simply giving people the consequences they worked so hard to earn. And he earned every last piece of it.